thank you for tuning into another episode. If you missed the last episode, check it out. We talked about my dad's passing, and we went into a lot of detail about death and how that works, or how it worked for him. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about the afterlife and maybe how his perspective changed now that he's up in heaven. Is that how you call it? Is it called heaven?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask, what's his new purpose now that he's in the afterlife? Like, is there a purpose or what's he doing? What's he
I
up to?
already knew you were going to ask that question because he already started talking to me.
Nice.
So right now he's very much enjoying literature. So
Okay.
have you ever heard of the Akashic Records?
Mm-hmm.
hmm So he has this thing about history that he is really enjoying all the questions that he ever had,
Mm.
learning about history and just history of just humanity. He's going through some training right now. Um, he wants to help students. He wants to students, like he wants to be a teacher. He wants people be able to not limit themselves and have a higher education and understand and know that no matter what their limiting circumstances are, that they can. So he wants to be able to help them. So let's say somebody has what's it called? When the letters switch around.
Oh
It's not
yeah,
coming.
dyslexia.
Yeah, like dyslexia. Like he's showing me like the different kinds of I don't want to say the word disabilities, but just like differences in people. And then like he wants to just help them see that there is a different way that they can learn exactly what everybody else does. They can do exactly what everybody else does. They just might need to do it in a different way. So that's his goal, is to get to that point. And right now he is just like totally filling himself with information like crazy about everything. He loves history right now. He's really into the history of civilizations, world history, things he just like he's there are still things that he's just working on that with learning that are just blowing his mind, like
Cool.
about things you think you know, and you really had no idea.
Interesting. Maybe
Yeah,
we'll ask him about some of that stuff in a future
yeah,
episode. Maybe some
absolutely.
aliens. Sorry. That's just my personal interest. Ancient aliens. Do you know about? Anyway.
That's the thing. He's telling you, don't worry, he won't let any of them get you.
I'm not afraid of them. I'm more like, come save us. We need you guys right now. Where are you guys?
Maybe he's saying that to me then because it freaks me out.
Right, right, right. How does he feel about a psychic medium interpreting for him? Like, is she doing a
Yeah.
good job?
Okay, his immediate response was, I don't know about this.
Sorry, Abbie.
In life, no, this is not his thing. He didn't believe in any of this. He says this is still very new to me. Um, he says it's very hard to be open, but he's allowing himself. One of my guides, Eric, is actually here, like helping a little bit right now with this and explaining it to him because he's just so lost with like, oh, do I speak into the mic? Like, what I mean? Just
So,
he's trying to communicate with me,
okay,
just like I'm trying to get my frequency with him. He's trying to get his with mine, like
I
figuring
see.
it out. So, my guide is totally like giving him the 411.
That's awesome. Is he enjoying himself or is this like a
Oh
terrible
yeah.
bore?
Yeah,
Oh,
no, his immediate response is, "Oh yes, no, not a terrible bore." He says it's a little confusing,
uh,
but it's fascinating because he's really liking the process of learning. So
uh-huh.
he's feeling open-minded about it. He's not closed off to it. It's just like my guide is very like, okay, well, if you do this, she can feel this. If you do this, she can smell this. She can
Mm.
taste this. Like he's still learning. Like he's still training. Time does not exist in heaven. We think of time as a linear thing, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, 1 year for them can be like that.
Mhm. I want to ask if he's planning to come back to Earth.
He answered it before you even asked the question. He said no, not immediately. Not immediately. He's
Yeah.
very interested right now in the learning process of everything. He just wants to absorb knowledge. He wants to absorb information. He wants to absorb cultures. He wants to absorb experiences. He's just like, he is having a great time, really traveling with connection. You know, we're not just talking about this earth. We're talking about, and it's like he kind of needed to start small because that was what he needed. So when he's ready, he'll expand more to other things other than just his humanness and what he knew of on this earth. So he says, as far as me, like, making friends with my alien buddy over here, he's like, it's still kind of weird.
Get on that, Dad. It's gonna be fun.
He's gonna do it for you.
Okay. I want to ask some questions about humanity. I don't know if he can answer these, but I'm going to ask them anyway. What do you think is the greatest challenge that people on Earth are facing right now? And what's keeping them from evolving out of the cycle of suffering?
He says their own free will.
Hmm.
He says, if they could just step out of the way of depression, which is in their mind, by the way. These are his words, not mine. You can really allow yourself to let go and be more focused on the things that you love and that you care about, which give you far more answers, he says, than maintaining a level of fear and anxiety, which then can control also what you focus on. And he says about manifesting. He's bringing that up, how you can make things happen. You can make your life matter. You can make people happen. You can make circumstances. He says the circumstances are only so much in your control, but it's because of your matter of mind frame. And I forgot what the question is. I'm just repeating what he's saying.
No, that's fine.
Answer it?
Yeah. As long as he remembers. He mentioned depression and how that getting in the way of people expanding. Like, could you maybe delve more into that?
Well, he's bringing up the earth cycle right now, actually, in the environment and the whole environment, as in the air with like pollution and toxicities, and how much all of that, the decay of the earth, it has really affected humans' natural behavior instincts. And he says it's like putting poison in your body, and he's showing me like smog and just heavy toxins on the earth, in the atmosphere that are affecting us. The ozone layer is a real thing, and it really is getting thinner, which then affects interesting. He says it affects our gravity.
Wow.
And when it affects your gravity, he says it affects your overall state of being, and it affects your mind. He says, so, with that and pollution and he's bringing up the media.
Mm.
He says it's just a cluster mess, really, of just a whole bunch of different factors that are making it more well known that people are depressed, and that depression exists, which I find an interesting conversation with him, because when I went to Africa, right, I went to Ghana a couple of years ago, like in their country, if I'm like, I need some anxiety medication, I'm depressed, they don't really,
They don't have it.
they don't have it. Like it's not a thing.
The nature connection is so strong, right? Like they're so grounded with their environment.
Right. The just the differences in the world and their thought processes and their belief systems and their faith structure, it has a lot to do with their mental health. We have a lot of help. We have a lot of help from the other side, and that can be a very surprising thing when you pass, from what I've been told. We have a lot of chaos and confusion, but also a lot of really beautiful things, really beautiful guides and helpers and people that assist us and assist the earth and make it so we don't just explode or implode on ourselves.
Yeah, I kind of imagine that. Also, aliens help, right? Right? Sorry.
Yes, Sadie. Aliens help.
All right.
And you're so excited about this alien thing.
I am. I'm
So cute.
I don't know why. Anyway, does he have a message or any advice for humanity? Just
He
curious.
says, take it. He says, take it and leave it. That's what he says. Take it
Okay.
and leave it. So let's interpret that.
Can he elaborate?
Let's have you elaborate. We're confused. Okay. You got to take the good with the bad. He says you got to take the ugly and the sad, and you have to spin it. He says it's about your perspective. You have to have a strong, he's talking about moral character. And when I say moral, it means more of a develop your sense of self and your own style of translation that is really your interpretation, he's saying, of finding a way to live a life that is solid and happy. All he ever wants for people and anyone and anybody in heaven and beyond the veil ever want for humanity is happiness and safety. There's no ill will feelings. It's just more like, how can we help? Because we have free will as humans to have choice. He wants his children very much to be happy and safe and healthy and make good choices for themselves. So that way, in the bigger picture, you'll be able to look back on your life and not regret the things he regretted.
Right.
I
feel like ego was a big thing in his life. Like he had a very big, strong ego, and it got in the way of maybe him being able to love more truly and deeply. Does he have any advice regarding like ego for humans, for us, for anyone?
So ego is a very human thing. It is not okay, so see, he's saying that the ego is more masculine. That's the masculine versus the feminine part of you. And that it's almost like it's a protective measure, really, that's built into us. We're not allowed to have ego because ego can be substantially important, he's saying.
In what way? Like, how does it help us?
Well, it protects us from sometimes making bad decisions.
Hmm.
And it can push us and drive us to do things maybe we really do want to do. So it's not all bad when we say the word ego. It doesn't mean like there's something wrong with you. It's more when you get stuck in that ego and you can't open your mind up to other ways and resources, he's saying, of having a more fulfilled life that is and hurting other people. And he's talking about power and control and how it's like that ego makes you think that you have the power and the control, and then you get up here and you realize you're stardust. You're he's being very blunt about that.
Yeah.
He's saying, you realize how much control did you really have?
Right.
What were you really? How much did you worry about manipulating situations and people when at the end of the day, it was more that you manipulated them with your ego out of fear? Is that really a fulfilling life? Is that really something he says to be proud of? So
And
these were some of the things that he went. I think he's talking from his own personal experience.
that's good. I like that. How can we balance that? You said ego is the masculine. How can we balance that with a more feminine energy? Or like what's the balancing side of that?
Nurturing your heart, nurturing your soul. And when I say heart, I don't mean the emoji heart. So you have your heart, which is your heart chakra, which is a whole energy center in your body. And I find it really interesting that when a soul leaves their body, they leave through their heart chakra. I always thought that they came out of their crown chakra, which is the top of their head, and they don't. They actually leave through their heart chakra. So he's saying really cultivating and nurturing what's in your heart and what's in your fears, and giving it attention, giving it understanding, and giving it boundaries. He says you can be limitless or you can have no limits.
What?
That was kind of a contradiction. Yeah, hold on. So you can be limitless in your ability to be able to have opportunity and believe in yourself, but then you can have limits by limiting yourself and your self-worth and what you allow yourself to be able to open yourself up to.
Mm. So self-worth plays a lot into what you can manifest through your heart. Is that kind of what he means?
Correct. So he's saying your heart's vibration is a very, very high frequency, is a very high frequency. And when you allow the structure of your life to fall into a level of ego and unself-care, right? It can bring that frequency down. And that is your authentic self. That is your feminine,
Mm-hmm.
which then it's almost like a scale he's showing me.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you want to control it more. And that's when your ego comes through in a more negative way, where if you use your ego in the more positive and in the more feminine, it would drive you versus pulling you back.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Even
And
though you think you're controlling things, you're really pulling yourself back. You're really hurting yourself.
right. And this isn't about being a male or a female. Like it's not about sex. It's about the energy that you are as a human.
We all have masculine and we all have feminine. We have
Mhm.
two energies here. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And there's
some
got to be some kind of balance, and both of them are meant to be.
right. And something that he was maybe struggling with in his lifetime is that he was very overly masculine. It was part of the culture, like that toxic masculinity. So what did he learn about that? And maybe some advice on how to get out of that? Like men don't cry mentality.
There was a lot of roughness when he was a kid. It seems like he went through a lot of stuff when he was a baby, when he was toddler, when he was real little. So he had a lot of just emotional experiences, I think, that made his ego came from wanting to turn things off
Mhm.
and wanting to shut things down so he didn't feel. And then over time, as his life on earth started progressing towards the end of his life, we'll say, it just was like it became harder and harder for him to manipulate those emotions and regulate them with his mind on a healthy way, on a healthy scale, without needing assistance.
Mm. He was deeply traumatized, like he was abused, but it was part of the culture. And I think that's true for a lot of people. They normalize it because it's part of the culture. Oh, yeah, we smack our kids. Oh,
That's okay.
yeah, you know.
And then guess what happens? We're not all the same. We all have different thumbprints, fingerprints. There's a reason for that. We're all different people. There's no snowflake that's the same, and so it affects everybody differently. And
Right.
for him, it was like he actually was a very deeply emotional person, but that's where his alcoholism ended up coming into play, was just the limitations that he gave himself. So to be able to control his emotions anymore, he couldn't. It was like he kind of was living in the past a little bit, like a lot, and just thinking and thinking and thinking, getting stuck in his head about the
Yeah.
things he couldn't control, the things that already were. I mean, how much can you really control what was? You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. And then you get stuck in your mind, and then you get angry,
Yeah.
and you get,
His
you know,
first son killed himself. That's a big trauma. That's why he became an alcoholic. Yeah. He was 18. So how can you get back in touch with those feelings so you can balance out your ego?
okay. So, sorry. He was showing me some imagery here again of his life review. And can you ask me that question one more time? I'm sorry.
You can tell me what he's showing you. I can ask you again.
Well, I was actually just telling him, I was like, well, how, like, where was your son? He, his, he was very, very gutted, just so you know. I mean, if you can imagine when his son killed himself,
You know.
it was like he allowed himself to love again because he loved you, but it was just that need to control. It was the need. It was like afraid. He was just really, really bad at communicating. Gosh, um, his emotions and what he was going through in his mind. Oh, I know we totally got off subject. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I
You're
can bring you back. Do you
showing me a lot right now. So I'm like trying to absorb it all because it's like all at the same time.
take your time? Take your
I'm like
time.
telling my friend Eric, I'm like, come on, man. Like, can you help him? This is turning into a jumble mess right now.
Dad, she has ADHD. You have to slow down.
I had to really, one thing at a time, my friend.
Right.
So
Okay.
they have met, they have seen each other, they have had that meeting. It's more, Dad, you need to take some time. And I'm right here, and I'm always going to be right here, but let's help you evolve more. Let's help you progress in the levels of dimension, you know?
Mm.
So he was able to meet his son.
So, we were talking about the ego and how it's like a masculine energy, and how your heart and your emotions is more the feminine energy to balance that out. But he was talking about how his trauma, like his childhood trauma, made him want to not feel anymore. And I think that's the truth. That's the case for a lot of people. So how do you get through that obstacle into like your feelings again if it was so traumatic? Does he have any advice for that?
Sure. Let's see. He's saying to get to know yourself on there's a sidetrack conversation happening right now between my guide and your dad.
Okay.
Just
Okay. Tell
they're
me
just
all about it.
so I'm kind of now like on the outside going, can you let me in on what you're talking? Because they're discussing it
Yeah.
um energetically with our chakras. Okay, your dad is still like at privy to this new information.
What did you say there?
He's still finding it mind blowing, the things he didn't know and
Oh,
he
okay.
wished he in
Oh,
his
yeah.
life,
Yeah.
like on this earth. There's a lot of humanness that he still hasn't let go immediately. Some people just snap like, oh, I know everything and I'm good.
Hmm.
Your dad's a little more stubborn.
I can see that. Yeah.
Okay, so with can you ask me that question again? I'm
Sure.
sorry.
No problem. So trauma basically stops us from feeling our feelings, and we want to shut it down and not go there anymore. How do we get back in touch with our feelings so, we can be less ego based?
Getting back to the innocence of who your essence is as a soul and as a person, and not allowing, having those boundaries, to not allowing that to change you. And when you have those circumstances, I struggle with this. I struggle with this really hard myself. And I ask them all the time, like, how do I get through that? And having some kind of faith-based system of whatever it is that you want to make it be, being in alignment with who you really are as a natural person, and helping yourself do some digging and research in your mind, appreciating what you can control and remembering who you are. And that's where you get the most lost, is forgetting who you are and getting lost in what that was terrible that happened to you because you didn't have control over it.
Yeah.
So if you can take your little masculine, a little bit of your ego there, a little bit of your stubbornness, and make a decision for yourself, that I like this part of myself. I'm not going to let this part of myself go or be changed. Allowing yourself to think through the thought processes of the things that happen to you in worst case scenarios, allowing yourself to be vulnerable and have tough conversations, even if it's just to the wall or a journal. It's when you completely evade the whole scenario altogether and you don't actually cope with it or deal with it or find chemical ways to stop that. That is when it gets very dangerous, because you're not allowing yourself to grieve. Because he says it's really about grief. He says grief is a very human thing that is necessary for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
You grieve a human when they pass. You grieve a pet friend. He's talking about my bum buns right now. You grieve a pet friend when they pass. And that is part of evolving and the evolution of yourself.
Yeah.
Just putting it in a box and putting it away, it's just going to, honestly, there's going to be a lot of boxes over time, and then they're going to just all fall over.
Yeah. Do you think that we also grieve the loss of ourselves, like our innocence or our natural selves, like the way you were saying?
That's part of the process. That's part of it.
Mhm.
So not just after we pass away do we need to go through the process of grieving our human life and the process of forgiving what we feel is in the deepest essence of who we are, that we may have feel like we failed at, and understanding why we needed to fail at that, or why we did and how we can do better next time. But it's also like important while we're here to absolutely, I'm like totally channeling this right now, so I'm hoping it's making sense.
Go for it. You're making sense.
Okay. So it's part of the process that you need to grieve what you need to grieve to get over it, so you can allow yourself to bring the next best thing in.
I feel like there's such a fine line between allowing yourself to go through, your grief, your sad, dense emotions, and like going through that process, like my dad did when he died. And that's what's supposed to happen. But it's also difficult. Sometimes we get stuck in those places as human beings. But there's also a fine line between toxic positivity, where we're ignoring all of that and putting a flower on top of it and saying, I'm over it already. I can just look at what's good. What's like the balance? How can we balance that out?
Your dad is being very sweet right now, and he's saying he's actually calling you sweetheart.
Oh, okay.
So he's balancing it. He's saying, yes, you're absolutely right. There is a balance. He says, it is a tough balance. It is a tightrope walk, that you do. It's on a very high cliff where you could fall very easy. But that's part of the human experience, is learning, is teaching yourself how to balance those things, not letting yourself get stuck. He says it's an evolutionary thing for you. You have to work on it. It's work. It's not just like, I'm just going to be different now.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. You're saying Abbie can attest to that, because I have an issue with, like, I get very stuck in my mind with negative thought processes, and it's like, no matter how okay things are, it's like still doesn't feel okay, and I start freaking out.
So I have one more question, and then I'll kind of go towards closing this. But how do you feel about magic mushrooms? Because they really help me. I know it won't help everybody. Maybe it can make some people psychotic. I don't know. But what is this perspective on magic mushrooms? And yeah.
You want to ask your dad this one?
Yeah.
Brave. I would never ask my dad that. Okay, so he's saying, like everything, there's the balance. There's the good and there's the bad. All right. So with mushrooms, okay, so there are some that toxify your body and some that detoxify your body. He said, so there's some out there that can actually be poisonous, that are not good for you, that are negative. But then there's a lot of medicine, a lot of medicinal purposes. And like, he's showing me, just like back in the ancient times, he's showing me imagery right now of them using mushrooms very regularly for dealing with, he's showing me like grief. He's showing me a woman right now whose husband passed away and she couldn't get through the grief. And so they would give her mushrooms. They're showing me the birthing process, like back in time, and how they would use it for medicinal purposes for pain to alleviate childbirth. It's always been used since the beginning of mankind, and there is a very good purpose for them, and they can help you. And then there's also some that will, it has to do with your state of mind too. like where you're at when you're taking certain mushrooms. Some of them, like I said, can be poisonous and just like totally be, but there's actually a good thing about that too, he's telling me, because it can detoxify you as much as it's toxifying you and poisoning you. It's actually like making you, you might throw up, you might
Purge.
have
Yeah.
diarrhea. You're purging. You're
Right.
actually purging. So he's saying that that's actually kind of good too, because you're purging.
Hmm.
Huh. That was new. I never knew that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, they help me more than any psychiatric medicine ever has. And I feel like I owe them a lot. They really pushed me in the right direction when I was very stuck in a very low place. So that's why I'm curious how spirits view it,
Yeah.
you know?
He's saying if you want me to say that I'm supportive of doing what you need to do to help yourself be in a healthier mind with a substance that I don't have a problem with, that's what he's giving you permission for.
Thank you. Because, his alcoholism was a bit too toxic, I think, for his body. So I want to make sure I'm on the right path with that and I'm not going
You're
into
not
some
on the wrong
addiction.
path with the mushrooms.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yes. For you, it works. Other people might not like it so much, but for whatever purpose he's on board with it for you. He's saying it's very medicinal for you.
Awesome. That was a good
He's also
confirmation.
saying though that there's limits.
Yeah.
There's limits to how far you can go with it.
Okay.
And he wants you to be very careful with that thought process of making sure you make limits, you keep limits, you have boundaries, you keep boundaries.
Yeah. I won't overdo it. Don't worry. So,
Good.
yeah, that's pretty much all I had. I mean, I guess I can ask, like, is there something he wants to say before we end this? Maybe to me or my brother or my mom, whoever is still on this earth.
He's with you all the time. He's not controlling you. He just wants to make sure that you're all safe. He wants you to all have pleasant lives. He appreciates the connection that you feel from him, to feel like he appreciates everybody's connection that they try. Like it seems like all of you try and put a positive spin on him and your experiences with him, and he feels a lot of gratitude because he feels that love, like he's feeling it, and it helps him evolve and helps him get to a higher place where he wants to be, where all souls want to be, is closer to God, closer to source energy, and it really helps him and it makes him feel really good. So he's thanking you for that. He just wants you to keep smiling. He's saying you're so beautiful. He wants you to keep smiling. He just wants you to be happy. And the same thing for your brother. Is your brother in college or is he doing something with his education?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Might be a thought process. I don't know how old he is, but so your dad is saying with your brother, I don't know if he is satisfied with what he's doing, like with his career field right now, but I do feel like there's something more for him that he could do for himself that would be a little bit of a better fit. Do you know if your brother's happy with his work and what he's doing?
Well, currently he's doing nothing, so maybe that's not
Why?
right for him.
Right. So your dad, I think, really wants him to take some classes and go to school for something.
Okay. All right. He was always a fan of education, so clearly. All right. Well, thank you so much, Abbie. That was amazing. How are you feeling? Are you a bit tired?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching this video. And if you'd like to book a private session with Abbie, I'll put all her information down below in the description. I'll put her email and her website so you can book a private session with her and contact your loved ones. That's it for today's video, and we'll see you next time. All right. Bye.